Hello again, everyone. Edwin Leonard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about Mercury transiting the third house in a natal chart. Now, generally speaking, let's say if your house is average size, which is 30 degrees, your Mercury will take approximately 2 to 4 weeks to transit it if Mercury is direct the whole time. However, if your house size is a little bit bigger and or Mercury goes retrograde during this at any point during the time it's in the house, then it could be longer. So as far as the transit goes, well, anyway, and also if your house size is shorter, it could be in there for a shorter period than the average time if it is direct the whole time, that is. So anyway, as far as Mercury transiting the third house, well, I think there's one statement that the venerable ex-U.S. President Ronald Reagan said one time. I believe it was, quote, a veritable plethora of verbiage. He said, well, that could be a vast understatement during this time because you may very likely be very loquacious during this period and want to talk a lot and maybe even downright garrulous to some degree. I mean, this is really a time where you feel really this need to communicate strongly, even if your astrology chart suggests that you're rather taciturn and quiet. This could be a time where you come out and really want to communicate with others. You might have this desire to assimilate information more than usual and become learned on many subjects. You might, this could be one of those things, this period could be about maybe not really having the best attention span, and your mind may be somewhat superficial and lack persistence during this period. When the Mercury was transiting the second house, it was basically the thinking you were maybe more methodical and deliberate in your thought process and took your time mulling over things. But now it's almost like the exact opposite or antithesis of this, sense it made the transition into your third house, and you're just like you might have a lot of plethora of thoughts right now racing very fastly, maybe even feel like they're almost going simultaneously, and you really your mind is probably a lot more is more quicker now. You might be more quick-witted, and really this might in this period of time you might have communications with neighbors and siblings, if you have any siblings, may figure more prominently than usual. Perhaps if by some chance the few of you that see this are maybe in high school, you may have more communication emphasized with your classmates. If you are already, most majority of you that see this likely are out of high school, and those of you may be maybe communicating more with ex-classmates, people that you had known back in your early education. Now, also, I think saying that your mind may be restless and active, exceptionally restless and active in this period, could be an understatement as well. You might really be more verbose and more articulate during this time. You might communicate your ideas very quickly, but you might lack persistence with maybe with these ideas and maybe coming up with a lot, but not really following up on many of them. You might kind of go from one subject to another, talk a little bit about one thing, and then go to another subject. Now, also, in general, your mind might be very inquisitive during this time because of that strong desire to learn different things, perhaps during this period. And really, this could be a period where you might have a lot more activity connected with short journeys. You might find yourself going to the stores in your neighborhood a lot more than usual. You might be making a lot of quick runs for people. And the thing is, you could really, at this particular point in time, there's just a lot, really, as far as just talking, conversation, it could be really strongly emphasized now. You may even like say at work, you may be required to do more and really do feel like you're doing more than one thing simultaneously, doing a lot of plethora of things at once, and really but maybe more readily able to do this than usual. If your job was such where you have to show certain versatility and really kind of you just be almost do this and do that, you might have that more ability to handle that better now as opposed to in the past during this transit. Now, if Mercury is retrograde at any point during this time, it could be where you might be going back maybe to things that you learned previously, reviewing things, maybe catching up on subjects you even learned in your early education, or finishing maybe if you have some unfinished business left communication wise with some people, perhaps with some siblings or neighbors, and you might go back and talk to them and revisit old conversations and reconnect and talk about maybe conversations that you felt needed to be completed. Now, it's also important to look at the sign that Mercury is transiting during this time, as this could flavor the transit. Now, let's say that Mercury is transiting Scorpio during the majority or the whole time of the transit in the third house. Well, you might find yourself talking a lot about things connected, perhaps maybe with astrology, the occult, supernatural, things that are maybe very deep. It could be things that are connected with investigation. Your mind might be more interested in things like crime dramas on TV, or things like for the show Forensic Files, learning about forensic science, things that are connected with detective work. Let's say another example, if Mercury is transiting Sagittarius for either the majority or the whole time of the transit in the third, well, it could show a lot of exuberance and expansiveness in your communication, perhaps with siblings if you have them, and with neighbors. And maybe you talk about things that are Sagittarius, like connected with sports or philosophy or religion, things that are connected with the outdoors, perhaps. Now, another and things just maybe in general, like as far as exploration goes, and really. Uh, Now, let's say it's also important to look at the aspects that are made during the time Mercury is transiting the third house, as this could impact the transit. Now, let's say that transiting Mercury is making a square in conjunct or opposition to your natal Mars during this time. Well, this could indicate that communications may be a little bit contentious during this transit, maybe a little bit combative. And it could be possible, maybe even with neighbors, or and if you have any siblings during this time, or something happens where maybe an argument with someone on a short journey, perhaps, or maybe even with either fellow classmates if you're still in high school, or maybe with ex-classmates, and for most of you that are out of high school, I'm sure by now. So. Or another example, let's say that transiting Mercury is making a sextile or trine to your natal Saturn. Well, this could be auspicious for perhaps just serious communication during this time, and things connect and discipline serious communication in connection with perhaps with siblings, perhaps with neighbors, and perhaps with classmates or ex-classmates, depending on whether or not you're still in high school or not. Most of you would be ex-classmates. So, anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for Mercury transiting the third house in the natal chart. And stay tuned next time, where I'll be dissertating and talking about Mercury transiting the fourth house in the natal chart. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone. Because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.